It's that time of year again. It's prediction time, and this video will have me making a fool of myself as I prove that really, I don't know what I'm talking about. Last season I predicted the entire SPFL plus who would win the Highland and Lowland League. This season I'm doing the same, but instead of going in depth for all 44 teams, I'm going to keep my in-depth analysis for the Championship and Premiership. I have still made predictions for Leagues 1 and 2, along with who would win the Highland and Lowland Leagues, but I simply don't know enough about them and I'd rather not make another 25-minute video. This is me basically admitting I am lazy, isn't it? Anyway, with that out of the way, let's make some predictions that will be terribly wrong come the end of the season. Starting off with the Highland and Lowland Leagues then, I have Brechin winning the Highland and Lithgow Rose winning the Lowland League. Brechin since their relegation have either finished first or second in the division, with last season seeing them miss out on goal difference. They finished behind Brora, who I believe are also good shouts to defend their title. Then Lithgow meanwhile are a junior club that have been making their way through the divisions and have been in the Lowland League for a few seasons now. Their first season saw an 8th place finish, whilst last season they would finish 5th, behind Trannon on goal difference. There is bias to this, as I have visited Lithgow a few times and I really like going there, so it would be great to have them in the SPFL. And no, I'm not just saying this because they beat Reef in a pre-season friendly. Bonnyrigg have just come down from League 2 thanks to their points deductions and will be looking to come straight back up, and that is a very much real possibility. With East Kilbride out of the league, it makes the Lowland League a competition to keep an eye on, as we may actually get a title fight. Who knows, even newcomers Clydebank can get in on the action. To League 2 now, where I have Forfar finishing bottom, Elgin in 9th, Stranraer 8th, Edinburgh City 7th, Clyde 6th, Annan 5th, Dumbarton 4th, Stirling 3rd, Spartans 2nd, and East Kilbride winning it all. Whilst Forfar did improve after sacking Ray McKinnon, who is now at Brechin, come to think of it, I might have made a mistake already. They just feel like a club who are circling the drain, and this season will be the one that sees them end up in the Highland League, or the Lowland League East, or whatever it's called. I need to do a video about the league structures. Elgin I have seen this season, and they got beat 5-1 by Rafe. I predicted they would finish down this end last season, they made the playoffs. Have I learnt my lesson? Of course not. Stranraer and Edinburgh City just look like they'll be there, not in threat of relegation, but not making the playoffs either. Clyde have had an impressive League Cup stage so far, but they did so last season and proceeded to be terrible until about December. Annan and Dumbarton have just been relegated from League 1. Dumbarton start with a 5-point deduction because of their administration last season, and I see them two fighting for the playoffs but not getting promoted. Stirling I can see finishing the playoffs with Spartans, and new boys East Kilbride will fight it out for the title, with East Kilbride coming out on top. Am I saying this because they beat Reef? Yes, kind of. I was actually quite impressed with them in that game. They held their own against St Johnstone, and last season they made it to the Challenge Cup semi-finals, so that's why I have them winning the league. They also have history on their side, as 3 of the 5 teams to have earned promotion into the SPFL have quickly found themselves in League 1, and East Kilbride certainly fit that bill. Okay, so I wrote this before East Kilbride's last group game.
What the fuck is this?
Moving up to League 1 now, where I have Kelty finishing bottom with Montrose 9th, East Fife in 8th, Peterhead 7th, Stenhousemuir 6th, Hamilton 5th, Cove 4th, Alloa 3rd, Queen of the South 2nd, and Inverness winning the league. Kelty and Montrose ended up in a bit of a scrap with Inverness and Annan last season over avoiding the 9th place playoff spot last season, which, when you consider Inverness had a 15-point deduction, isn't a great look. Our 2 promoted sides from League 2 will finish in the same order they did in League 2, although Peterhead have looked decent in the League Cup so far, nearly getting a result away at Motherwell. Stenhousemuir did well to sneak into the playoffs last season, but I think they'll drop off a bit. Hamilton Ackies are a complete mess, and as of the time of writing, have not signed anyone. I fully expect to make another video on them this season. Well, they now have a transfer embargo for the full season. Oh god, they've replaced Inverness. Cove, Alloa and Queen of the South will take up the playoff spots, whilst Inverness, after their season from hell last time around, will win the league to see a return to the Championship. We now move on to the Championship, where I shall actually give reasonings beyond vibes. This is a league I should know about, seeing as the team I support are in it, and I do a podcast just about every week covering it. This means it will be easily the one I get the most wrong. Starting off in 10th, I'm going with Arbroath. Arbroath won League One last season, and I think they'll be heading straight back down. The additions they have made include Nikolai Todorov, who scored 1 goal in 32 last season for Accies, Ross Callaghan, who, whilst technically gifted, is injury prone, so I'm not sure how much we'll see of him, Aaron Muirhead, who is actually a pretty decent right back for this level, and Harry Cochrane, who has been at Queen of the South the last few years, so will be interesting to see how he gets on. Overall though, the squad just isn't at the quality to stay up. They'll do better than last time, where they only managed to reach 23 points, but they'll still be bottom of about 30 to 35 points come the end of the season. Coming up in 9th, I have Queen's Park. Queen's Park have signed Ewan Murray and Aidan Connolly from Rafe, but aside from that, they signed 3 players from Dumbarton, and Josh Fowler, whose only experience in Scottish football is in the juniors. They finished off last season only getting 2 wins in the entire second half of the season. Over 18 games, they got 2 wins. And with massive budget restrictions coming in, I can see them getting relegated in the playoffs.
We got notification that City are withdrawing their sponsorship from June 2026, end of June 2026. Currently, the club's expenditure is forecasted for this season, for this year, to be £5.7 million. Once City's sponsorship ends, we know that we have to get that down to close to £1 million, so we basically have to find £4.7 million worth of savings between now and June 2026.
Genuinely, how do you spend £5.7 million in the Championship and finish 8th? Speaking of 8th, I'm going with Dunfermline. Is there bias to this? To an extent. If I was going full bias, then I'd have them bottom like I did last season, but the people who are claiming Dunfermline are going to reach the playoffs because they have Neil Lennon in charge, or they have these big gambling backers who are totally not dodgy, have no idea about just how bad Dunfermline were last season. They scored 28 goals in the league last season, meaning they had the 4th worst goals per game record in the entire pyramid. And I mean the entire period. All 290 clubs, and they had the 4th worst attack. They've not really done anything to address that. Once again, they'll end up staying up by being bad, but not quite as bad as the rest of the teams below them. In 7th, I've gone with Airdrie. Airdrie stayed up in the playoffs last season, but that came after having a Brecon-esque start to the season where they had 6 points at New Year, and Accies getting a 15-point deduction to send them bottom instead. They've added Ewan Henderson, Jamie Bahonas and Sean McGinty from Accies, who I think are fine additions and will keep Airdrie away from the drop this season. 6th place now, and we have Morton. It's Morton. They'll have a terrible start, go on a mad, unbeaten run over the winter, reach safety, and then just not bother with the rest of the season. 5th place, and just missing out on the playoffs, I have Partick Thistle. Thistle have signed Tony Watt, but I'm not convinced it'll be enough to replace Brian Graham. Their squad is also quite small, sitting at 18 players as of the time of rating, and any new signings may end up living with Kieran Ashton, which is enough to put anyone off. In 4th place, I'm going with my own team, Rafe Rovers. Last season, I predicted we'd win the league. We proceeded to sack Ian Murray after 1 game, spend a month fanning about with managers before getting Neil Collins, who then decided to go back to America just before Christmas, but once Barry Robson came in, we started to become a competent football team again, and if we took the league from that point, we were the 3rd best side in the division. The squad depth is something that worries me a bit, however, but I believe we can get a playoff finish this time around. Moving on to 3rd place now, where I have Scott Brown's Ayr United. Ayr were in the title hunt for the first 2/3 of last season, but did end up falling away towards the end, where they would end up losing to Partick in the playoff quarter-finals. They brought in Kevin Holt and Dom Thomas from Derry City, along with Liam Dick from Rafe, with Stuart Bannigan and David Mitchell joining from Partick Thistle. Whilst the squad has definitely improved, I don't see them in the title fight, purely because of the gap we'll see from the top 2. So this leaves the 2 sides coming down from the Premiership fighting it out for the top spot. How predictable. Will Ross County come out on top with Uncle Roy's wealth, or will St Johnstone come out with Simo Valakari leading the way? Well, in 2nd place I have Ross County. This is entirely dependent on if they are able to keep Ronan Hale. He scored 18 goals across all competitions last season, and in the 2 League Cup games he has played, he scored 4. Granted, it was against League 2 opposition, but he's linked with Premiership moves for a reason. If they keep him, then they have a very real shot at the title, along with signings such as Dean Cornelius, Declan Gallagher, Aaron Lyle and Gary Mackay-Steven. This, of course, leaves St Johnstone as champions. Taking other championship teams' best players seems to be the recruitment strategy, and I have a feeling that these players with championship experience will be the difference. Jamie Gollan has been proving himself to be an excellent signing already, along with the likes of Jack Baird, Morgan Boyce, Regan Tumulty and Stevie Mallon. I think Saints will just about win the league. Also, I have to share a podcast with a certain St Johnstone fan this season, and he has made threats against me if I don't put them as champions. On to the Premiership now, where finishing bottom and returning to the Championship, I have Livingston. Aside from Mo Silla, who was initially announced by Brunei side DPMM, who don't even play in the Brunei leagues but the Malaysian leagues, having moved from the Singapore league, it's weird, don't ask. None of their signings are Premiership quality. Zach Rudden has been average at best in the Championship for 2 seasons now. Cammy Kerr, Macaulay Tate and Stevie May are not going to keep you up. It is a very strong Championship squad though, which makes me think they plan on getting relegated to then win the league next season, which is certainly one of the plans of all time. Finishing 11th next, I have Dundee. I have actually seen Dundee play this season. It was a 1-0 loss to Alloa. They look terrible. The only notable signing they have made is Plamen Galabov, who has 5 caps for Bulgaria, but for as long as Stephen Presley is manager, they are going to be in trouble. Finishing 10th then, I have Kilmarnock. I see another season of struggle for Killy, and I don't think it will take long for there to be questions asked about Stuart Kettlewell, which he'll just claim as abuse or whatever. Greg Kelty and Scott Tiffany are the 2 main arrivals, but the losses of Danny Armstrong and Bobby Wales have significantly weakened the squad. Up to 9th now, where I'm going with Falkirk. The winners of the Championship last season, they have at the time of rating only made 5 additions. However, Scott Bain is a proven Premiership goalkeeper, Brian Graham will be a very good option to have given his record in the Championship, Lewis Nielsen is on loan from Hearts. I think Falkirk will be fine this season. 8th place now, and I'm going with Motherwell. Yeah, they'll be fine. Whilst a draw with Clyde and a late win against Peterhead aren't ideal, the League Cup group stages are glorified friendlies, so whatever happens, happens. No, I'm not just using this as some sort of coping mechanism. Elijah Jost, Ibrahim Said and Jordan McGee have joined the club, but the big question still remains over the future of Lennon Miller and if he'll stay at the club or give them a big payout. Finishing 7th and just missing out on the top split, I have St Mirren. The Buddies managed to sneak into the top 6 ahead of Hearts last season, but that was more than Hearts constantly shooting themselves in the foot, on multiple occasions. This time around, I think they'll just miss out, but once again will be much closer to the European spots than any threats of relegation. In 6th and missing out on Europe, I'm going with Dundee United. Jim Goodwin's men had an impressive return to the Premiership with a 4th place finish last season. They brought in 11 players this season from all corners of the globe, but seeing as the last time they got in Europe, they got relegated. Whilst I don't have them anywhere near that level, I do see a slight drop-off. In 5th and returning to European football, I have Hearts. Hearts had a bit of a messy season last time to say the least, with Neil Critchley bottling both Conference League knockouts and a top 6 finish on the final day. Derek McInnes is in charge now, and Tony Bloom is starting to come in behind the scenes with his recruitment model. They brought in Claudio Braga, Elton Kabangu and Saba Kajota, along with retaining the services of Lawrence Shankland, so expect to have them back in the European fight this season. In 4th, I have Scottish Cup winners Aberdeen. Scottish Cup winners Aberdeen had an incredible start last season before having relegation form from January onwards. That was worth it in the end though, as Scottish Cup winners Aberdeen were going to beat Celtic in the Scottish Cup final to lift the trophy for the first time since 1990. Nicholas Milanovic, Emmanuel Gyamfi, Kusini Yengi, Adil Aluchi and Alfie Dorrington are the main arrivals at Scottish Cup winners Aberdeen, and they'll be looking to build on last season, with European League phase football guaranteed, providing an extra challenge for Scottish Cup winners Aberdeen. Did I mention Scottish Cup winners Aberdeen won the Scottish Cup? 3rd place then, and I have Hibs. Hibs had the opposite season from Aberdeen as they were sat bottom in December, but Sir David Gray's men would surge up the table and finish an impressive 3rd. They've signed Josh Mulligan, Jamie McGrath, Raphael Salinger, but most importantly, Thibaut Clige for £1 million. The first non-Old Firm signing to break the £1 million barrier since Paul Bernard joined Aberdeen from Oldham in 1995. As of the time of writing, they've just drawn 1-1 with Danish side Highland, who finished 1 point off the title in Denmark last season, so it's looking good for them so far. I obviously can't comment about how they did in the second leg, as this video will be up before that. For channel members anyway. So that leaves the top 2 spaces to be decided, and of course it's between the Old Firm teams. And before anyone comments about there is no Old Firm, well, if the Glasgow Old Firm doesn't exist, don't worry, Slimer Wanderers versus Floriana over in Malta is called the Old Firm as well. Look, they even have the same colours. How thoughtful of them. Anyway, second place, I'm going with Rangers. Russell Martin has come in along with the 49ers taking ownership, which has brought a new sense of excitement to Ibrox. They brought in Oscar Cortez, Tello Asgard, Emmanuel Fernandez, Jedi Gassama, Max Aarons and Lyle Cameron to name a few, and they'll be looking to decrease the gap to Celtic this season. Speaking of Celtic, I have them once again winning the league. They finished 17 points clear last season and have added Kieran Tierney, so it's just inevitable, isn't it? Saying that, I have seen some panic from Celtic fans over their lack of transfers, although it does seem that this happens every year, so... Anyway, that is all my predictions done. Here's another quick look at what I have predicted for Tier 5, League 2, League 1, the Championship, and of course, the Premiership. What are your predictions for the upcoming season? How wrong am I going to end up being? If last season is anything to go by, then a lot. Leave them down in the comments below. Of course, channel memberships are available down in the description if you want to see these a day early. Members have their names on the screen now. Of course, liking, sharing and subscribing are always appreciated, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.